Last video, we got our date label nice and formatted. Now in this video, we're going to get these buttons working, right? When I push the GitHub follower button, I want to present a Safari view controller and show the GitHub's profile on the internet. And then when I press the get followers button, we're going to dismiss this view controller and show the list of followers. Now, this video is going to be all about communication patterns, mainly using delegates and protocols. So let's give a quick overview. So essentially we have our item info VCs, right? The GitHub profile one and the followers one. Well, these child view controllers cannot present new UI, right? Our user info VC, right? This overall view controller is what needs to present the Safari view controller. So what we need to set up is a communication pattern between our item info VCs and our user info VC, right? Because we need to basically say, or I'm sorry, the user info VC is going to sit back and listen and wait for our item info VCs to say, hey, my button was pressed. Here's my button press. Do what you got to do. So our user info VC is going to sit back and wait. Once we know the button's been pressed, then we're going to act accordingly. So that's the communication pattern we're going to set up. That's kind of the first one. We're going to get good practice at this. The second one we're going to set up is the followers button tapped, right? Because when the GitHub profiles button is tapped, cool, we're showing Safari view controller, done deal. However, it's different. When the follower button is tapped, we are going to dismiss the user info VC, and then now we need to communicate with the follower list VC, because now the follower list VC is going to update with the new user's followers, right? Because we have to kind of reset that screen, make a network call to get the new user's followers that we requested. So there's going to be two communication pathways that we set up in this video. So if you're not familiar with delegates and protocols and setting up those one-to-one communication pathways, going to get some practice here. So the first thing we need to do in our user info VC is to create our user info VC delegate. So let's do that. So I'll talk through this whole process, and hopefully by the end of the second one, it'll start to make sense. So we do protocol, and this is the user info VC delegate. And it has to be class protocol there. And function did tap GitHub profile, and then func did tap get followers. So we're being very specific with our direct actions. If we wanted to, we could have made this one function like did tap action profile and then pass some sort of descriptor to let us know which button was tapped and then like act accordingly. I don't know. I feel it's very, I like it better to be very, explicit with what's going on. Like what happens when I tap the GitHub profile button? What happens when I tap the followers button? But just, there are other ways you could write this. So we've set up the basic protocol, which again is just like a list of commands. These are the list of functions that are available to us. So now if I scroll down, this is where we're going to conform to that delegate here, just like we do before with the extensions. Extension, user info VC is going to conform to the user info VC delegate. And then I'm going to get some errors here. It does not conform to the user info delegate. So if I do that, it's going to say, do you want to add the protocol stubs? Maybe get my head out of the way. Hit yes. Cool. Now these are the stubs. So basically now we have conformed, and in this code, we need to say what we're going to do. So when we tap did GitHub profile, do a comment here, we're going to show Safari view controller. And these are just kind of placeholders. Did tap get followers is going to be basically dismiss this VC. And then we're going to create the other delegate, so tell follower list screen the new user. So that's what's going to go on in these two functions. So remember, the delegate kind of sits back and waits to act when it's told something happened. In this case, it's going to be told, hey, I did tap the GitHub profile, or I did tap get followers. So now we need to set up the communication pathway so our item info VCs can tell this that, hey, my button was tapped. So in order to do that, we need to go to the item info VCs. We're going to go to the superclass, right? Because both our repo and our followers are going to have this delegate. So we can put it in the superclass, the item info VC. So this is going to be var delegate, and is going to be of type user info VC delegate, right? So when these are initialized right away, we need to set this delegate that we're going to use. So if we go back to where these are initialized in the user info VC, in our network call, right? Remember, we're initializing the repo item VC with the user, and we're initializing the follower item VC with the user. Here's where we need to set the delegate. However, we can't do it in this line. Like we could do something like let repo item VC equal GF repo item VC with the user. Cool. And that takes the user. So now we have that object. And then now we do repo item VC dot delegate. Oh, let me do a command B, get the autocomplete. Dot delegate. And you can see it is of type user info VC delegate. And then we set that equal to self. Self being the user info VC here, because this is the one that's listening for, right? Down here, these functions. So now this is getting messy here in our success case. So we're going to refactor this real quick. And this is part of the optimization. We're going to go do this throughout the project because I like my switch statements to read really, really simple. Let's refactor this, and then we'll talk about it reading simple. So here, let's create a function called configure UI elements with and then user, and it's going to take in a type user. Whoops, user. And then we're going to basically just cut and paste, and we're gonna make this neater here. So let's move the header info VC down here, because we're gonna have to do this a couple times, right? So let follower item VC equal GF follower item VC, and again the user. And take the user we're going to pass in, because we're going to call this function right here, self.configure UI elements with user, and then we're going to pass in our user that we got back here. So before we do the full refactor down here, let's talk about how our switch statement looks. And again, because this is such a simple line of code, I like to put these on one line. So back to just kind of readability of code, and back to the concept of your code being like a table of contents, right? Because ultimately, you want your code to be readable because you want some stranger, some new developer coming into your code base to be able to read it real quick and figure out what's going on. So now in this network call, instead of having all this logic in the success case, now they can see, okay, network call, cool, I'm familiar with results, so I know I get a success and a failure. And upon success, what am I doing? Okay, I'm configuring the UI elements with the user. Hey, that makes sense. And then upon failure, cool, I'm presenting an alert. So right away, like, you know what's going on. Now, if you need to, back to the idea of a table of contents, if that person needs to know, like, okay, what I'm trying to figure out is how are those UI elements configured, then they can drill down deeper into this function. But if that's not what they're looking for, that's not what they're trying to understand, they can easily skim over this network call and know right away what's going on this screen. So again, that's why I like to have my success and failure statements in a switch statement just be very, very, very straightforward and readable. So that's why we're refactoring this down here. Okay, so anyway, remember what we're doing? We're creating our item VCs so we can set the delegate on them. So we have our repo item VC. Now we have our follower item VC dot delegate equals self. And you know what we're going to do, right? You know what we're going to do. Cool. So now I have these two objects, and then now instead of initializing it right here, the child VC that I can pass in is just the repo item VC, and then we don't need to initialize it because we already did that up here. Now it's the follower item VC. And then we have the rest of the UI configuration. You can kind of space that how you like, that's more readable to you. So like I said, we just kind of yanked it out of here and pulled it down here. But now, like I said, we're declaring these items kind of separately rather than just initializing them in line here in the function call. That way we can set the delegate on them. So now our communication pathway is hooked up, right? On our item info VCs, right? The repo and the followers, they each have a user info VC delegate. So now they can call delegate dot, and we can use these functions. Delegate dot did tap GitHub profile, did tap Git followers. And then we'll let this VC know, and then it'll act accordingly. So let's go into our item info VC because we haven't done something. We haven't given our action button an action, right? We've just set up the UI. Our action button needs to have an action so it knows, what to do. So to do that, again, we're going to do this above the UI function here. So private func configure action button, and it's going to be action button.add target. Remember, this is how you add an action. Target is going to be self action. This is where we need a function here. We'll put that right here. Func action button tapped. And we're actually not going to put anything in here, and I'll tell you why. But it does need to be at objc. So if we do a command B, so we can make sure we get this autocomplete, hashtag selector. Remember, we need the at objc method. Call action button tapped. There we go. For dot touch up inside. There we go. We've done that before. Hopefully that was review. So what I'm doing here by not putting anything in here is, remember, this is our generic superclass, right? That's why we didn't give our button a style. So we gave it an action, but the action doesn't have anything in the function, right? It's just a stub. And the reason it's a stub is because in our subclasses, right, here in the repo item, remember, we can override our parent class. So here we want to override we can just type action button tapped. We get the override automatically. Xcode is smart enough to know that we're overriding this. So now we're overriding our superclass and saying, hey, when my repo item VC button is tapped, now we want to do delegate.did tap GitHub profile. There we go. So now we've set up the communication pathway. We know when that GitHub profile button is tapped, we know that this is going to fire off back in our user info VC. This did tap GitHub profile. This is going to fire off. We're going to do a quick print statement just to showcase that it is working. Print my button was tapped. Yay. Okay, so let's run this to make sure our communication pathway is set up. And then if it is set up, we're going to work on setting up the Safari view controller and showing the GitHub profile. So here we are, SALLEN 0400, get followers, pick a random follower here. Cool, now if I tap GitHub profile, nothing happens. You know why nothing happens? Because the classic Sean Allen mistake. I do this all the time. In the item info screen, right? We created this configure action button. Well, we never called it. Configure action button. Helps when you call your functions to have your programs work. I do that all the time. Maybe you're like me. Happens all the time. So now let's try this again. 0400. Pick a random follower here. And GitHub profile tapped. Cool. I'm covering the console here, but see, my button was tapped. So our communication pathway is working. When we tap this button, our item info VC told our user info VC, hey, sir, or ma'am, my button was tapped. Not you, Siri. So now that we know that that's set up correctly, we don't need you super high like that. Let's go to our item info VC. And instead of just, printing this off, let's actually show a Safari view controller. So the first thing we need to do to get access to Safari view controllers here is import Safari services. And now we have access to that. And basically what Safari view controller does is it opens up a special view controller, but you have to pass it in a URL. So we need to do guard let URL equal URL from string. And that string is going to be the user that we have here. Nope. User. Do we not have a user here? Okay, so we don't have access to the user. My bad. So that's an easy fix. So back up into our protocol, we can do tap GitHub profile for user and of type user. And we're going to need that did tap get followers for user. So we're just going to pass it in through our delegate. So back to the repo item VC. This is no longer, we'll do a command B. We're going to get an error because this is no longer the proper function. So delegate.did tap profile, did tap GitHub profile for user. And then remember, we have access to the user here. And then we still have more errors. That's in our user info VC. These are not correct. So you see it says user does not conform to protocol anymore. We can do that. We can get our new stubs that are correct. So we'll delete those. And then now we have access to the user. So we can do guard let URL equal URL from string. And that string is going to be the user dot HTML URL. Remember, this is the GitHub's, the user's GitHub profile that we're going to go to. So else, and then we're going to show an error. So present GF alert on main thread. Title is going to say invalid URL if this is wrong. The message is going to be the URL attached to this user is invalid. And then the button title string is just going to be OK. Put a period after that. So that's just showing an error. Should some reason the URL just be invalid. But now that we have our URL object, now we can do the Safari view controller stuff. So let Safari VC equal, and then Safari view controller. You see here, you can initialize it with a URL, and it's going to be that URL that we just did up here on line 121. So cool. And then one quick little thing, because the Safari URL defaults to a tint color of blue, just like the default stuff, we're going with this green theme, right? So we can do Safari VC.preferred control tint color, and that is going to equal .system green. System green always gets me. And then we do present view controller Safari VC animated true. And we do nothing on the completion. We don't need the completion handler. So now let's test it. Or let me run through this real quick. Basically, when we did tap the URL profile button, we're going to pass through the user. We're going to check to make sure that URL is valid. If the URL is invalid, we're going to show our custom alert. If the URL is good to go, then we create our Safari view controller from that URL. We are making our control system green, and then we're presenting that Safari view controller. So let's give this a shot. Oh, temp, sorry, the placeholder code there. Oh, I forgot to return. Thanks, Xcode. Keep me straight. All right, move this back over here. SALEN 0400. Get followers. Pick a random follower here. Mike. Hit the GitHub profile. And then you see we have the Safari view controller here with the full GitHub profile that we can click around. Like we're basically in Safari right now within our app. That's the value of the Safari view controller. Before the Safari view controller, it would literally exit out the user from your app and open up Safari. So the user would no longer be in your app. Well, with the introduction of Safari view controller, which was a couple, iOS 9 maybe, not that long ago, now you can stay within your app but still be surfing like Safari. And then you see up top we got our green tint here, so we can hit done and be done with it. So get a profile, there it goes. It didn't animate properly the first time, so I wanted to test it again. Done, there we go. We can test out another one. Let's go to this Homer Simpson. There we go. GitHub profile, there we go. So cool, our Safari view controller is up and running. Our delegation pattern with communication is communicating properly. So that is the first part of this. Now, when we tap get followers, we want to, again, dismiss this view controller. So what happens is we dismiss, we're going to pass MVC Santos. We're going to dismiss this, pass MVC Santos to our follower list screen here. And then we're going to make the network call to reload the followers. We have to set the title to the new username. It's basically resetting this screen with the new user. Well, that requires another communication pattern. Remember, that requires our user info VC, what I have showing here, to communicate with our follower list VC, because I have to tell the follower list VC what username to use. So basically how we just set up the communication pattern between our item info VC and the user info VC, we got to do the same thing between our user info VC and our follower list VC. So let's get to that. So let's stop this, but first let's do a little bit of refactoring, right? Because this Safari view controller is pretty common, right? You could potentially see how many places throughout your app you may want to present a Safari view controller. A common example is like your privacy policy, terms and conditions, or just other random things. So I don't like to have my Safari view controller stuff limited to just one view controller because I don't want to have to type this code out like every time. So what we're going to do is we're going to do Command X, we're going to cut that. And then we're going to go to our UI view controller extension. This way, all of our view controllers will have this Safari view controller. So I can do func present Safari VC with URL. And now I can paste that there. and this will all work. Actually, it won't work because I don't have import Safari services. Now it'll work. And then I need to make sure I delete the import from the other place here. So let's go back. Now we need to do present Safari VC with URL. There that is. And then let's get rid of Safari services from here since we don't need that. We got it over there. So now we've exported that out. Again, this way, multiple view controllers can present a Safari view controller if need be. They just need a URL. And before we move on to the next delegate, one thing I forgot to do, good memory management stuff, is in our item info VC. These need to be weak. Our delegates, our delegate variables need to be weak, right? Because they can, this will prevent the retain cycle, similar to how we did the weak self in the network call. Anytime you're dealing with the delegates, they need to be weak, again, so you can avoid the retain cycle. So my bad, I forgot about that. While we're on that topic, let's go to our follower list VC and not favorites. I've done that a bunch, right? Our follower list VC, right? We haven't been here in a while. This is our good old collection view. We need to create the delegate here now. So protocol follower list VC delegate. And this is typical naming, is like the name of the view controller and then the delegate, right? You've seen this in table view, UI table view delegate, UI collection view delegate, that kind of stuff. And again, let's be type class and func, let's say did request followers and then for username, and it's a string. So we're just basically going to give this a username, and then as we've set up here on this follower list VC, as long as we have this username, we know we can get the followers from it, right? And our get followers function here, get followers, we just need a username and a page. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pass through that username. So again, the same process, right? We've created the protocol. Now we need to conform to this delegate. So down here at the bottom, again, amongst all of our other delegate conforms, right? UI collection view delegate, UI search results updating, all that stuff. We're going to create another extension. So ext extension follower list VC, and that is going to conform to the follower list VC delegate. And we're going to get the error saying, hey, we don't conform. We need the stubs. There we go. So again, the follower list VC is just waiting. It's waiting for somebody to tell me, hey, I did request followers for username. So here we're going to put this. We're going to basically call get followers for that user. And then we got to do some other stuff to reset the screen, but we'll come back to that. So that's the basic setup. But now, you know, the follower list VC is ready to listen, right? It doesn't know who's going to tell it what to do yet. So who's going to tell the follower list VC what to do? Well, that is our user info VC, right? Because our user info VC is going to know that, hey, the get followers button was tapped. So the user info VC has to tell the follower list VC, hey, get these followers. So or we need to set the delegate for the user info VC now. So in the user info VC, we need to have weak var and then delegate, and this is a follower list VC delegate, right? So now when we initialize our user info VC, we need to set this delegate. So let's go back to where we're initializing this user info VC on the follower list VC. Remember, this happens on did select item. So in our collection view delegate here, collection view did select item at, right here, we're creating the dest VC, which is a user info VC, right? And we're setting the dest VC.username equal to that. Well, now we can do the same. So dest VC.delegate. Remember, let me go back to that. I went over that pretty quickly. Dest VC.delegate, and you see it is a follower list VC delegate because we've declared that. And we can just make that equal self. So now the user info VC, I'm sorry, the follower list VC is now listening to the user info VC. Let me get back to it. Oh, I went past it. Scrolling too fast. Here we go. Yeah. Dest VC.delegate is equal self. So this is saying follower list VC is listening to the user info VC. So our communication pathway is set. Now we just need to go to the area where we want to make the communication happen. And that's going to be in our user info VC. And it's going to be all the way down here on did tap get followers. But that's actually the second step. That's like the final step. But we can call it here. We can say delegate did request followers for user.login. Right. Okay. But what we haven't, so basically what that is saying is whenever, it's almost like a game of like pass it along, right? So let's go back to the first part of the pass it along, our follower item VC, right? Which we haven't set up we haven't overridden our action. So action button tapped, remember override. And this is the same thing we did in our repo item VC, where we did tap GitHub profile. Well, now in our follower item VC, we're going to do delegate.did tap get followers for user. We're going to pass this user along. So remember, this is kind of what we're passing along the information. When we tap the follower button, our item info VC is going to say, hey, delegate, which is our user info VC. My follower button was tapped. So let's go to the user info VC. So here in did tap get followers, our user info VC is like, cool, got it. Now I need to pass that information along to the follower list VC, which that's what's happening here. Delegate.did request followers for, remember we keep passing this user along, user.login, because we want the username specifically. But before we do that, let's stop here for a second and think of a potential edge case. What happens if they tap did get followers and the user has 0 followers? Well, we don't want to pass it to the follower list VC, make the network call, reset the screen, right? That's unnecessary. So what we want to do is if the user has 0 followers, let's just stop right here and show an alert. So let's check against that. Guard let user, whoops, I should spell guard correctly. Guard user dot followers, right? Not equal to 0. We want to make sure it's more than 1. So else we're going to present alert on main thread. Try to think this user has, or say no followers. The message can say this user has no followers. What a shame. And then if you do command control space, we can get a little frowny face action here in our alert. And call the, we'll put so sad on the button title. And then we return out of here. We will not request the new followers. So again, when they press the follower button, if the user has no followers, we'll show an alert. So sad, ha ha ha. Hit OK, and then we're just still on that screen, right? We don't want to unnecessarily go and make the network call and do all that stuff. But if the user has followers, then we're going to go ahead and call delegate did request followers, and then we also have to dismiss this VC, because dismiss the user info VC. Okay, so again, where we're at, our item info VC, our follower one said, hey, my follower button was tapped. Our user info VC says, okay, cool. Let me pass that information. Okay, cool. There's more than 1 follower or more than 0 followers. Let me pass that information onto the follower list VC. So the follower, I do that every time. So the follower list VC here in the follower list VC delegate is sitting there waiting for that, message. And it does. It says, okay, did request followers for username. So now here is where we have to basically make their network call to get the followers and then like reset this screen. So we got to do a little bit of work here. Let's do self.username equals username. And what we're doing is remember this username that we have that kind of, where is it? Right here on line 19. We're basically setting that equal to whatever username we pass through. And then we also need to update the title. So title equals username, right? Because we don't want the title in the nav bar to say something else. Let's also followers dot remove all. Let's empty out the followers, and just in case, filtered followers dot remove all. Basically, remember, we're just like resetting this screen completely. Let's actually go back up here. We need to set the page number to 1. Whoa, what happened there? Page number equals 1. Do we have page number? Did I call something different? Yeah, just page. It's not page number. So page is equal to 1. And what that is remember, if they would have scrolled through a couple of times, maybe page number had been incremented up to like 5. Well, we want to reset that to 1 because this is like a brand new user. And then we also want to scroll the collection view like up to the top. So we can do that. So collection view dot set content offset, and CG point is going to be .0. We want to go up to the top, and then animated true. So we're going to see it like scroll up to the top real quick if it's not. And then finally, after we've reset the screen, right? We've set the username, we've set the title, reset the page to 1. We've cleared out our arrays. We've scrolled back up to the top. Now, finally, we want to go ahead and call get followers for username, and page is going to be page, right? Because we just reset the page to 1. So this is basically resetting the page and then making the network call again. So let's test out this little game of phone tag that we got going on. Remember, item info VC is going to say, hey, my button was tapped. User info VC is going to say, cool, let the follower list screen know and dismiss myself. And then we're going to make a new network call. Hopefully I'll pick somebody random. Hopefully they have followers. iCoder86. Okay, 2 followers. Cool. So when I tap get followers, we dismiss, make the network call, and we have their 2 followers. And we can even keep going down the line, right? Let's tap to Medine. He has 22 followers. Get followers. Dismiss. Here's the 22 followers. There we go. So you can see our communication is working, our buttons are working, and if we go back to search, we can work on clearing that out in a future optimization video. But the buttons are hooked up, delegation is working. Again, just remember, it's a communication pathway between 2 views. Delegates and protocols are what's called a one-to-one communication pattern. You see, we're just setting up a communication pathway between 2 views. The other communication pattern, like notifications and observers, that's known as a one-to-many. That's where if you want to have like many different things communicating with one thing, that's a whole different topic. But just so you know that exists, that is a common interview question too, talking about the different types of communication patterns. I got videos about notifications and observers on my YouTube channel. You can check those out. We're actually not going to be covering those here in this course, but delegates and protocols are like the main one. So now that we got these buttons working, that essentially finishes our user info screen. In the next few videos, we're going to work on persistence, where we're going to be able to add to favorites and then show those favorites in a table view on our favorites tab, right? We've been working in the search tab the whole time. We haven't even looked at our favorites tab. Well, I've accidentally clicked on favorites list VC about 10 times, but we haven't really gone in there. We're going to do that in future videos, so stay tuned.